Thank you, team, for being
President Biden just delivered remarks at the third meeting of the White House Competition Council. Let's take a listen.
I'd like to wish a happy holiday to all those who are celebrating. And folks, we meet at a moment to state the obvious of global uncertainty. And in countries around the world grappling with elevated inflation and an ongoing war in Ukraine is presenting challenges as well. But amidst all of that, here's what I want the American people to know. Because of their resilience, the American people's resilience, and because of the economic strategy we pursued, the United States of America is in a stronger position than any other country to navigate these global challenges, period. Jobs are up, incomes are up, people are back to work, and American manufacturing is roaring back. Excuse me for the cold. We're taking inflation very seriously by enacting policies to bring down costs for people. And I have to admit to you, my focus is primarily on working class and middle class folks. They're the ones that get hurt the most, in my view. We now pay the highest prices for prescription drugs in the world, and we're going to bring those costs down, make it easier for people to pay their bills by allowing Medicare to negotiate their drug prices. Now, we passed that already, but they're not going to see it immediately. It's going to take a moment. But by January, no one's going to pay more than $2,000 a year if they're on Medicare for the prescription drugs. Negotiating prices across the board for an awful lot of other medicines as well. And so it's going to be a real game changer. The bottom line for people on Medicare, they're going to have less inflation. They're not going to be paying as much money out. And, in addition to that, a big part of how we're going to keep making progress is by increasing competition in the economy. That's why we got the Competition Council here. And it starts with energy prices. We've made historic progress. We've made historic progress. With the price of gas down $1.30 since the beginning of the summer. In some few states, it's below $3. It's, in the low threes most places. Although there's some fires and some other problems that have to do with refining capacity in the far west and middle west. But we're going to deal with that as well. Last month, the price of oil worldwide is down, not just last month. In fact, lower than any price since Putin invaded Ukraine. And we're working off of that as opposed to anything else. We haven't seen the lower prices reflected at the pump, though. Meanwhile, oil and gas companies are still making record profits, billions of dollars in profit. But guess what? The price of oil comes down. Guess how long don't you think the price of the pump should come down? The price of a gallon of gasoline. But it takes a long time for that to happen in relative terms. And they're making a lot of profit, and the public is paying as part of the inflation. And but look, my message is simple. To the companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump, bring down the prices you're charging at the pump to reflect the cost you pay for the product. Do it now. Do it now. Not a month from now, do it now. And it's going to save people a lot of money. A little over a year ago, I signed an executive order to promote competition with a goal of lowering prices for consumers and raising the wages of workers and encouraging innovation in the economy. We made some real progress. When companies have to compete, it's a simple proposition. When they have to compete, they make better products, and guess what? The price goes down, it doesn't go up, and there's competition. And we've gotten a lot done already. Today, I'm charging everyone at this table to go even further than we've gone so far. I'm directing members of the council to sharpen their focus and lowering the cost for families. Because what's inflation? Inflation is at the end of the month, do you have less money from your paycheck or more money from your paycheck? I mean, the way that people, that's how it's calculated by the vast majority of American people. And so we got a lower cost for families. And this isn't just some abstract goal, because the problem isn't just theoretical. Like many of you, I grew up in a family where when the price of gasoline went up, it was a conversation at the breakfast table. It was a conversation to take for real. And families all across America at the end of the month are trying to figure out how they're going to pay their monthly bills. And they're going to have any left over. My dad would say, there's going to be any breathing room. when it was all over. And what we're talking about today is something that's weighing down family budgets. Unnecessary hidden fees. Unnecessary hidden fees, known in the parlance as junk fees, are hitting families at a time when they can't afford it. They shouldn't be paying anyway, in my view, but at a time when they can't afford it. And let me give you an example. It hits middle and working class families especially hard. Things like overdraft or on your checking account, or your credit card fees late, or the huge termination fees are going to stop you from switching from a cell phone. You have one cell phone, you want to go to another cell phone, you want to go to another provider. Well, guess what? There's an incredible fee you have to pay to terminate you got to pay a fee to go to somebody else for a better deal. This council is going to come back to me, God willing, and the creek not rising, as the old saying goes, with a plan for eliminating and reducing fees. Families shouldn't have to pay these fees. No one's sneaking surprise charges in the bills, like finding out you have to pay a $50 processing fee for a hotel room that you're trying to book, a processing fee. You find out later. No more hiding the price that you're paying and not letting you know what the hidden fees are. And it's all taking money out of the pockets of average Americans. And thanks to efforts so far, 3/4 of the country's 20 largest banks are getting rid of fees for bounced checks. The average fee for bounced check is $50. They're getting rid of them. And that matters. And if we do all this, we're on track to lower overdraft fees. Catch this. I know the right department's done this. But lower overdraft fees by by $3 billion a year. $3 billion a year. Primarily the middle class and low middle class families are paying because they're the ones usually the ones in the position that bounce on the check. My administration also cracking down on the airlines.
You've been watching President Biden deliver remarks at the third meeting of the White House's Competition Council. The president talked about bringing gas prices down and lowering the cost of prescriptions. Right now, we'll continue to monitor that story, but Red and Blue starts right now.
We're aware of lots of contacts between people in the White House and different people that were involved, obviously, in the coup attempt.
Any interaction that Donald Trump has with the committee will be under oath.
McCarthy could be poised to take the Speaker's gavel if Republicans can flip just a few House seats.
Nobody gives you a majority. You have to earn it.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy knows the midterm elections won't be easy. Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Robert Costa, coming to you from our Washington, D.C. bureau. We begin tonight with the latest from our CBS News Battleground Tracker poll. The poll shows the Republican Party is still projected to pick up the House majority, but it's by no means guaranteed. This is a tightening midterm campaign. For now, the poll shows Republicans could win 223 seats. That would be enough to retake the House. But that number of seats is down for the second month in a row in our CBS News surveys, from a projected 226 seats in August and 230 in July. We are now joined tonight by three of my CBS News colleagues. Congressional correspondent Nicole Killian, she's here with me at the desk. Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett is also here in Washington. And CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys Anthony Salvanto joins us from our Studio 57 in New York. Let's start with Anthony. New CBS News polling is out today, looking into the January 6th investigation and how it could affect the November elections. Anthony, what are you seeing in the new data?
Hey there, Bob. Let me show you one thing right off the bat, because I think it speaks a lot to what we're seeing with regard to the January 6th hearings, and that is the investigations. We ask people, okay, is it more likely to affect your vote towards the Democrats, towards the Republicans, or not make a difference? On balance, by 40 to 31, people say, okay, it's more likely to make them vote for the Democrat. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of these people were Democrats, are Democrats, so they're probably voting Democratic anyway. This isn't the most important thing. The economy still is. Abortion is still critical. It describes a lot of what you said at the intro with that tightening race. But the thing that this does, Bob, is it keeps Donald Trump in the news. So there's this indirect effect, if you will. And there, I think this is important because more people by 12 points say they're going to the polls to oppose Donald Trump rather than to support him. But look at this. It's a majority, bare majority, he's still on their minds. So he's the former president. He's still on the minds of voters going forward. And that's how this all sort of ties up in that, Bob.
Anthony, what else on the Trump factor is coming apparent to you in the polling? Well,
there's a couple of things. One is that when you talk about January 6th, you talk about the documents that you've reported on as others have down at Mar-a-Lago. You know, people say that a former president, President Trump, should be treated equally, like everybody, and equally under the law, but not allowed any special exemptions from the law. That's really important because it sets a context. This goes across parties, Democrats, Republicans, everybody treated equally. And then the other part here is look at the pressure to some extent on Republican candidates out now. Back to these campaigns we're talking about here, 65% of Republicans say it's important for the party to be loyal to Donald Trump. Well, that means if they try to move to the middle, if they try to sort of temper what they're saying, try to appeal to more independent voters, they've got Republicans behind them saying, no, we want you to be loyal to the president. And I'll tell you, behind this, these people vote more. These folks vote more. So it's really important. It's that Trump factor. He's a net negative overall, but he's really motivating for the Republican base, Bob.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you as always. Major Garrett, we're going to turn to you on this. If you're talking to Republican sources and they're looking at the final few weeks of this campaign, based on that polling data, based on your reporting, how is Trump going to factor in? Will he be a presence on the trail in swing states or not?
He'll be a presence even if he's not there, Bob, because as that polling data that Anthony just summarized shows, former President Trump is on the minds of voters, Democrats and independents and Republicans, in very different ways for all three political categories. Republicans think about that loyalty test for fellow Republicans. Independents are thinking, am I more interested in my evaluation of the Biden agenda or my satisfaction or dissatisfaction with that, or the prospect of Trump-influenced Republicans or a Trump candidacy for 2024 as I think about my midterm vote? And sort of Democrats, of course, think a lot about former President Trump, see him as a threat to democracy and these overall issues of their own sense of balance in political power. So they're already against the former President Trump and Republicans. So he is a part of this midterm election, unusually so, because as you well know, Robert, midterm elections after a change in power, which we had in 2020, always about satisfaction or dissatisfaction with the new president. Now it's going to be about that, Biden, but also significantly about former President Trump.
Major, that's right. I mean, it's usually a referendum on the president. But, Nicole, as much as President Trump is front and center this week in Washington, there's a Wednesday hearing of the January 6th committee. Is he front and center when House Republicans are framing this election? You were with House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy just a few days ago in Pennsylvania. What have you learned?
Yeah, and I think that's what's fascinating in terms of looking at some of those numbers that Anthony just presented us. And that 47% of those registered voters said that this is not about Trump. And I think whether you talk to Republicans or Democrats who are campaigning this cycle, to a certain extent, they don't want this to be about Trump. When I was at that event, as you mentioned, with the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, as they rolled out their midterm agenda, there was not one mention of the former president, not in the speeches and not in
even
our
praise.
interviews.
So they're avoiding the topic a little bit.
A little bit. And so, and also, similarly, I think when you talk to some, Democratic strategists, I mean, certainly this could be an easy way for them to gain points on the board, right, in terms of, bringing up the former president and some of these issues and legal troubles that he finds himself in. But also, many Democrats I've talked to are kind of trying to stay clear of of that as well, because again, I think for both parties, this is really kind of coming down to those kitchen table issues, the economy, again, abortion, obviously, in light of the situation with Roe versus Wade being overturned. So I think that is more so where we see the respective parties trying to steer the conversation and more so away from the former president. But we'll see with these hearings. And again, once the committee puts out their report at some point, in the next couple of weeks, potentially by the end of the year, we'll see if that kind of resonates or has any impact.
Major, that's where the Republicans in the House want to steer the conversation. But Democrats, Vice President Harris, President Biden, they've talked about democracy. You've just co-written a terrific book about democracy.
Thank you.
How is democracy coming into this conversation, even as the parties take their own respective positions on the message?
In ways that we've never seen before, Bob, in this midterm election cycle, questions about either the fragility or strength and resilience of the American democratic experiment are on voters' minds in ways never before. They're competing with the two biggest issues, inflation / the economy, that's one, and abortion rights, privacy rights, that's two. But right behind it in most surveys, and in some surveys, even exceeding those two issues, is this concern about the strength and the continuance of American democracy. So it's out there. And getting back to your first question, Bob, on whether or not former President Trump is the driving issue or not in statewide races for the Senate, whether he's there or not, his endorsed candidates are the Republican nominees, and they're faring so far poorly. In New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, less than expected in terms of strong showing for J.D. Vance in Ohio. Blake Masters in Arizona also running behind. Adam Laxalt in a competitive race for sure. In Nevada, maybe the odds-on favorite there, but none of them are performing up to expectations. And so whether or not former President Trump campaigns in those states or is part of the TV campaigns that most viewers see in their living rooms or on their smartphones in digital advertising, those endorsed candidates carry the Trump mystique, for better or for worse, and so far are underperforming.
And in addition, on this democracy front, Nicole, there are sometimes unexpected variables that come into the midterm conversation. New information comes to light. We're all waiting to see what the January 6th committee does on Wednesday at 1 p.m., perhaps its final hearing before the midterm elections. And we learned a little bit of new information over the weekend from Denver Riggleman, the former senior technical advisor to the committee. He appeared on 60 Minutes. Let's take a listen.
Did it hit you at one point that this is way bigger than it appeared in the beginning?
Absolutely. So you get a real aha moment when you see that the White House switchboard had connected to a rioter's phone while it's happening. That's a pretty big aha moment. You get an aha.
Wait a minute. Someone in the White House was calling one of the rioters while the riot was going on?
On January 6th, absolutely.
And you know who both ends of that call?
I only know one end of that call.
Nicole, what are your sources close to the committee saying about that Riggleman interview, as well as about Wednesday's hearing?
Well, certainly there has been a little concern about Denver coming forward. Obviously, he used to work for the committee, and so the committee has acknowledged, and I think they also acknowledged to 60 Minutes, that, he certainly participated with respect to the investigation, but that they have also been, it goes beyond just kind of the things that he looked into, right? So from that standpoint, I think the committee feels that, hey, we're doing our due diligence as well. He's not the only guy kind of doing the main investigating work with respect to the committee. And stay tuned to see what we have. We understand that it's possible that we could see some new documentary footage, perhaps some new clips with respect to Roger Stone, and that the committee may take a deeper dive into more specifically kind of how far some of these discussions went back, that they might have predated, the election in terms of whether it was Roger Stone or Steve Bannon, to the extent that they did feel that the president would put up some kind of fight to the election results. And so I think that that could be some type of narrative that we see emerge out of the committee. We also know that they have been looking through those Secret Service texts, some of which were missing. So perhaps we could get more information on that front in terms of what the committee has learned. But again, we do expect from members that we will hear more new information to a certain extent. But on the same token, you know, they do have to start wrapping things up. So whether or not this puts a bow on everything, we probably won't know until we see that final report by the end of the year.
Major, we also heard from the vice chair of the committee, Liz Cheney, at the Texas Tribune Festival. Both of us were in Austin. Let's take a quick listen to what she said there.
Let me say that any interaction that Donald Trump has with the committee will be under oath and subject to penalties of perjury.
Major, as you've been focusing on the issue of democracy and the midterm elections, how much is Cheney's voice inside the Republican Party resonating with fellow Republicans?
Not nearly as much as she would like it to, Robert, that's for sure. Liz Cheney is going to every Republican who will listen to her, and there are fewer and fewer of them in the Republican conference. But in the broad Republican conversation generally, she's saying something very large is at stake here. What's at stake is this party, meaning the Republican Party's continued commitment to what the Constitution says and how elections are conducted and the believability therein. And she keeps saying there is no evidence, there hasn't been evidence, no one who's questioned this election has produced evidence to suggest anything other than what happened. President Biden won, and lots of Republicans won in tight congressional races and in state legislative races. Those are the realities. But she tells her Republican colleagues, as long as you continue to indulge former President Trump's continuous and baseless lies about 2020, you are undermining this party's commitment to the Constitution and the democratic experiment in this country as we have known it up until now. And she would like Republicans to rally around at least that part of what she thought was a universal Republican idea and agenda. So far, it hasn't been universal, and she's trying to dislodge former President Trump's hold over the party on this one particular question. She's no fan of the Biden administration or its agenda, but on this, she wants Republicans to disengage themselves from former President Trump and get back to first principles. She's not having nearly the success she would like to.
And we'll hope to get back to both of you soon. Nicole Killian and Major Garrett, thank you very much. Our CBS News polling shows enthusiasm is high on both sides of the aisle. But what are House Republicans running on exactly? The leadership has a new plan, but some others in the conference are talking about impeachment. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
I'm here for you.
Take an orange? Yes. You do? Here.
America needs drivers.
And we're here to help.
What are you learning from Girls on the Run?
Never give up and to always keep trying.
If I'm a parent in your state, I'm like, what's Congress doing?
Beyond this gate is actually the border with Ukraine.
We've seen people not just opening their hearts to Ukrainian refugees, but their homes.
Where will you go?
Nobody says it like Gail.
If we can't talk about it and we can't make changes, when can we talk about it?
Gail King, CBS Mornings. Everything your morning should be.
when weather turns extreme.
The 150-mile-per-hour hurricane is still churning north.
Every second counts.
Massive and rapidly intensifying.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
CBS News and extreme weather. Feel the forecast.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me?
We got it. We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Robert Costa. House Republicans are firming up their closing message to voters. As CBS News polling shows, the party has some challenges, though, as it works to win the majority in the chamber. Let's bring back my colleague, Nicole Killian. You spoke with House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. What did you hear?
Well, look, I mean, House Republicans are very confident that they will be able to take back the majority, and so that is why they wanted to kind of put this full-throated effort together to unveil this commitment to America and to really get on record and get on the board with what they want to do, whether that is trying to strengthen the economy, whether that is dealing with issues of public safety and the border, whether that is, protecting individual freedoms and dealing with the issue of education, health care, and also conducting more oversight and government accountability. Those are a couple of the pillars of their plan. And so Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was joined by a number of Republicans throughout his conference. And from that standpoint, I mean, I think he feels very confident going into these midterms. As he told me, he feels that they've put up a lot of good candidates. And so
we have a clip of that, right? Let's watch that.
We do.
Your
Let's
exchange
take a
with
listen.
the House Minority Leader.
I know you want to pick up as many seats as possible this cycle, but how many are we talking? 10, 20, 30 more?
Look, 5 makes the majority, but we want to compete everywhere, from Rhode Island to Oregon to California to Florida to Iowa in between. I think we have probably the best candidates you've ever found. I've listened to Nancy Pelosi and the DCCC. They believe they're going to keep the majority and actually win seats. So nobody gives you a majority. You have to earn it. And that's what the commitment is about.
Now, I will say I pressed Minority Leader a couple of times, both on camera and off camera, on his projections. Obviously, he's not going to tip his hand there. But, look, I think, as he said, he knows he has to get at least 5. And as he told me on prior occasions, he believes that he can get as many as possible. I did talk to former Speaker Newt Gingrich, who I know you've talked to as well, who actually advised Kevin McCarthy on this plan, which is kind of a new contract with America, if you will. And he thinks that Republicans can get anywhere from 15 to 70 seats. And he really thinks that this whole narrative in terms of, the economy, the border, that is really going to be a motivating factor for voters.
15 to 70 is quite a range.
It is.
Quite a range. But let's say they win the majority. It's not like a Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, is going to have an easy path. Yes, they have a plan, the commitment to America, they're calling it. But if he does win the gavel and ascends to the speakership next year, he's going to deal with a conference that's complicated, has a lot of members who are very aligned with Trump. Let's take a quick listen to Nancy Mace, the South Carolina lawmaker from Meet the Press over the weekend.
Do you expect an impeachment vote against President Biden if Republicans take over the House?
I believe there's a lot of pressure on Republicans to have that vote, to put that legislation forward and to have that vote. I think that is something that some folks are considering.
If McCarthy's Speaker, Could he push back against any calls for impeachment inside of his conference? Does he have that kind of political standing based on your reporting, or would it be pretty tough for him to contain his members?
Well, I think we have to see how things play out in November and what the actual dynamics are in terms of, A, how many seats they pick up and the types of seats they pick up in terms of the type of members who come on board. But, in terms, they did make clear, certainly at this event Friday, but, both the minority leader and other top Republicans have made clear that, again, they do want to conduct more oversight. Some of the things that they talked about more so, not so much about impeaching the current president, but, looking into the origins of COVID, looking into China more aggressively, really diving deeper into issues at the border. So that's at least what they're saying publicly about the avenues that they would like to investigate and pursue. But certainly there will be calls, I'm sure, within the conference to take a more aggressive stance with respect to this administration. And will they go as far as impeachment, I think, remains to be seen.
Nicole Killian, thank you for being with us. Always appreciate your reporting. And that does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And a reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of our program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just head to cbsnews.com/redandblue.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along